difficult conversation for us to have, me especially. I mentioned to you, I sent you all a letter after the last meeting. One of you were kind enough to respond. About 2 weeks ago, we lost another puppy mill survivor. Her name was Candy. I want her name to be heard. She was a throwaway after they were done with her. She could no longer breathe. Her body was broken. She got 11 and a half months with us. 11 and a half months of fresh air with no urine and feces burdening it. 11 and a half months of grass under her feet. 11 and a half months of a warm bed, a cold bath, and a family that loved her. If you believe for a minute that these dogs in these puppy stores are coming from legitimate breeders, they're not. Every single one of you look like intelligent people, and many of you look like very kind people, okay? Common sense would dictate, if you have a storefront that you're gonna rent for $4,000, are you gonna rent it to me for a couple hundred just because I'm nice? You're not, okay? A legitimate breeder is going to get $1,500 to $2,500 for a dog. They are not going to take that dog that they invested in, that puppy, the money that they invested in the parents, and hand it off to these puppy stores for a couple $100 so that they can make $1,500 to $2,500. This reality is real, and we live it every day. And if you could see the horrific conditions that these dogs come from, you would understand. It does not matter how clean their store is. What matters is the blood money that's running it. And if you keep it alive, then you're supporting that blood money. I watched, this was a community, man. I mean, I watched those people come up to Celestial Lodge. Holy cow, that is amazing. That's what you would want to be known for. 135 years, they belong here, okay? And I think that that is an unbelievable testament to community, okay? But a puppy store is not, and what's behind it is not. And you listen to all the people who were here at the last meeting. Gary mentioned how his pockets were lined. He's Fergalicious. She's thriving. Of course she is. She's thriving on the backs of these innocent animals, and they are dying, okay? Candy's life was stripped from her. She had no life but the 11 and a half months we gave her, and it is not right. This is about animal cruelty. This is not about business. And for all the businesses that Gary reached out to who are supporting him, okay, they stand as much to lose. I wouldn't want to be in your position. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. You've got somebody threatening to sue you, and you've got all the animal advocates who are saying, we're not coming here anymore. So I understand the position you're in. But at the end of the day, this is not what you want. This is not what you want to support, and I encourage all of you to just do the right thing.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Karen Fasano-Thompson, local attorney here in Red Bank, 40 Alston Court. I know you all have heard from me quite often. I've emailed all of you. I do have some further documentation that I would like for the Mayor and Council to have for your executive session, if I may approach.
Sure.
If you could all just pass it out amongst yourselves, and I won't take up as much time. So what I've prepared for you to review in executive session, I'm going to dovetail on what these, Janice and this Samantha, I believe. If I have your name wrong, I apologize. So I'm going to dovetail on some of the issues that they brought up. And the documents that I just handed to you are numbered, and I'd like to just briefly explain what they are so that when you do go back to executive session, you understand what has been provided.
Karen,
Yes.
and again, I'm not going to stop you, but normally I don't stop people doing it. But from a practical standpoint, this is not the public hearing. We
I'm not going to
appreciate
be here
this,
July 18th.
but
That's
if you're
why-
going to be here at the next meeting.
I won't be here. I'm on vacation.
Oh, you're on vacation. Okay,
Yes.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I wouldn't take up your time tonight if I were going to be
No,
here.
no, I just didn't know if you had heard me when I said that.
No, I absolutely did.
Okay.
But I actually sent an email.
No problem.
letting
Go ahead,
you know.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so the first document, just so that you guys can understand what happened at Dog Days, as the mayor indicated previously, we had about 150 to 200 constituents come out for a very successful Dog Days. And I can tell you that in a matter of 2 hours, myself and another individual walked around Dog Days with a petition in favor of this ordinance, and within that 2-hour period of time, as you can see, exhibit number 1 on your documentation there, we have nearly 200 signatures. In fact, there were 3 individuals during the entire evening that declined to sign the petition. So these are mainly your constituents. This isn't, people didn't fly in from out of town to come to Dog Days in Red Bank on a Monday night for 2 hours. So you have broad support from your constituents. I do want to contrast that with the support that Gary Hager, on behalf of Bark Avenue, has tried to garner with respect to a change.org petition. That's attached as exhibit number 2. If you look at the total numbers, they're highlighted in blue. Our petition in favor of the ordinance has nearly 3,400 signatures. Add that to the signatures that I previously provided to you. The hard paper signatures are over 250 that I provided to you at the last council meeting. Add that to the nearly 200 signatures that we received on Monday evening. And you have overwhelming support in favor of the ordinance. And these are largely people that are local. We didn't reach out to any national organizations for these signatures. So I think that council should feel very confident in the fact that they have a broad-based level of support here in Red Bank and in our neighboring communities. The people that come to Red Bank to patronize our businesses, our restaurants, and everything that Red Bank has to offer. So that's a very important point. I know that Mr. Hager has come and made his point. The other point that I do want to bring up is that I did have the opportunity to meet with the Executive Council for River Center. They graciously met with us. And I will say this much, that there is not broad business support within the Red Bank business community for Mr. Hager's business practices, nor is there broad support to engage in any type of effort to preserve his business. I can tell you this, that I was told specifically by one member of the executive committee at River Center that while it is not a business's obligation, moral obligation to police and enforce something like this, it is the obligation of the council. That the mayor and council do have an obligation, not only from a public policy perspective, but from a consumer protection issue, from that perspective, to ensure that Red Bank businesses are operating properly. And I won't get into too much on the last three. I wanted every council member to have a copy of the consumer fraud violation findings and the agreement that was entered into. Mr. Hager initially was charged with over 50 violations. At $500 a pop, that was a $25,000 fine. So that the Division of Consumer Affairs didn't have to prosecute it, Mr. Hager entered into a consent order whereby they agreed to reduce the fee or the fines from $25,000 to $10,000. You all have a copy in front of you right now, and that is number 5 on my list, or the exhibit list that you had. Take a good look at that, because what Mr. Hager is proposing at this juncture is a compromise that allows him to continue his business, and he's asking Red Bank, I don't know who in Red Bank, because it wouldn't be me, it wouldn't be our committee, but he's asking Red Bank to monitor and enforce his compliance with existing law. And my question to the council would be simple. Why on earth would we take on that responsibility when he has not been compliant with the law since the inception of his business? In 2015, when he bought Park Avenue from the prior owner, he didn't even register, he didn't even have a license to operate in Red Bank. And to come to the council with unclean hands and suggest that we should monitor and enforce, absolutely, that is not a compromise, and that is not something that the council or the borough should endeavor to do, not to mention the expense, because over time, that expense would far exceed any expense of litigation. On the notion of litigation, I will offer my services to the borough pro bono should Gary Hager decide to file a lawsuit against the borough. I will write. I have talked to Mr. Cannon. He has no issue with it. So the litigation costs would be significantly reduced, and I'd be happy to offer that to the borough. And most importantly, I do think, I also attached as Exhibit 6, please look at the reviews. This has nothing to do with the committee. This has nothing to do with politics. Look at the reviews on Yelp. These are people who have purchased animals from Park Avenue. Look at what they have to say. Look at the violations. Look at the deceptive business practices that he engages in. This is not something that, as Red Bank council members, we want to stand in favor of. And Red Bank, I have to say, is a progressive town. We have an excellent reputation across the state, across the country, quite frankly, for being a progressive state or progressive area that tries to ensure resident conformity, safety, but more importantly, that we're a bastion of acceptance. And while we certainly accept our businesses as they are, we have all types of diverse businesses here in Red Bank, we should not be promoting a business that engages in these types of tactics. And Mayor, lastly, I'm going to dovetail onto your comment. You had indicated that the borough contributed to the JCP&L litigation costs, although we didn't have to, but it was the right thing to do. And I would beseech you as council members to pass this legislation as written. There is no compromise here. We cannot allow these business practices to continue. We can't afford to monitor them. We don't have the ability to enforce them, as Janice had indicated. And I would simply ask you to do the right thing in this circumstance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll be brief. My name is David Fisher. I live in Manasquan, New Jersey, so I don't live in Red Bank. but I've been coming to Red Bank for the last 40 years. We moved to the New Jersey Shore and love this town. My brother used to work, for those of you old enough to remember, in Johnny Angels as an assistant manager many years ago. So we've been patronizing Red Bank because we thought it was a great town, and it's done nothing but get better and grow between the theater, Count Basie, the Bowtie Theater, the restaurants, the stores, for years. As time passed, we realized that other shore towns have also improved. And over the years, we've started to frequent Long Branch, Asbury Park, and of course our own town and Point Pleasant Beach. And then the more informed we became, especially about the connection between pet stores and puppy mills, we recognized that Red Bank had a pet store. And frankly, the more we learned about that, we felt that that was really a scar on the business community in town. And I think that's maybe what the rest of the business community is not realizing. Many people that we know don't frequent Red Bank anymore, and we don't shop here anymore because of that store. I hate to say that because we love the town. And we know that, as has been said, other municipalities, over 120, have adopted this ordinance. But even some towns that had pet stores have adopted this ordinance and given their pet store a lot less time to convert to a humane model. You're giving more time than any other municipality in this state gave their store to consider that change. For every puppy sold, we know that there's 2 parents back in some mass commercial breeding facility that does nothing but sit in a cage for its entire life. And frankly, that's not a great business model. In my opinion, there are no good mass commercial breeders. There's just different degrees of bad. And I think the USDA reports, when you can access them, make that clear. So logically, there are no good pet stores because they all buy from mass commercial breeders. And I urge you to adopt this ordinance.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience. My name is Leslie Moran. I'm from Randolph, New Jersey, and 2 minutes is my goal. 5 years ago, there were 3 pet stores selling dogs within 15 miles of my home, one of them right around the corner, and there are none now. Pet Puri and the Rockaway Mall closed after 71 violations. You heard from Janice about the Pet Purchase Protection Act, and they had a $13,800 fine. You may have heard of the sorry saga of Just Pups in East Hanover. Eventually, their health department had to close that store. Fortunately, in our town, we had a store that only lasted less than a year, but as soon as things were falling apart there due to the personal problems, we passed an ordinance. And what I would add to that is that the council member who was most supportive of us subsequently, well, he ran for freeholder and now he's running for council again, and he supports, he touts the fact that he supported our ordinance. And my point there is simply that it's never a political liability, even though, of course, Roman Herniak supports small business. He's a conservative Republican. He cares about downtown and so on. But I even have a YouTube video of him speaking to the Republican committee about how he supported the ordinance, because my main point is simply this. Public sentiment supports this. So I just finished by saying that elected officials can ignore public sentiment, but I'm very heartened by what I heard tonight. There may be occasions when it's the right thing to do, but in this case it is both unethical and unwise. Protecting a particular store in the interests of promoting a vibrant downtown may be understandable, but is a mistake. And I believe strongly that the trend toward compassionate treatment of animals in general and companion animals in particular is unstoppable, contrary to public sentiment and nonpartisan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Alberto La Rotunda. I came to the meeting today. I wasn't expecting to speak on this issue, but I wanted to let you know that I have personally experienced transportation of puppies in a puppy mill many years ago when I was traveling in the Midwest and was stopped at a lonely gas station on a major highway. And I would say the temperature outside was probably about 25, 30 degrees. It was hail. And the vehicle in front of me that was fueling was a flatbed pickup. It was actually a flatbed truck, which I'd say probably had about 20 cages filled with dogs on the back, which were uncovered, and they were soaking wet and whimpering. And that is a vision that I will never forget. Now, as far as the sale, I understand that there are puppy mills, and the gas station attendant told me this was from, quote, Puppy Vale, which is what they called it out there. At the same time, I also at one time was a state inspector for the New Jersey DEP, and part of my responsibilities was also to inspect facilities that use pesticides. Unfortunately, many of these users, facilities that had contractors come in from out of state, they were unable to do out-of-state inspections, and that brought up the issue of laws that have no teeth. The idea that we can ban a business but not be able to monitor what the business is doing. In this case, I was doing it with a badge, and it was a totally different type of activity. What I'm asking, if this is the right place to ask, is whether this ordinance considers the possibility of having a special tax on a pet shop business so that, for example, animal control would have the funding to constantly monitor the sale and the suitability of certain types of animals for sale in the borough.
The answer is no.
I would say that would be one economic possibility to enforce a law. Otherwise, if you're going to pass an ordinance, but you are not able to have an inspector or pay for an inspector to go in and verify what use is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Mr. Lusone. We're not taking action on this tonight.
No, I understand, but since we have a lot of people speaking
Oh,
about
yeah,
it.
no, I didn't know.
Yeah.
You walked in late, that's what I said.
So anybody coming from Manasquan or anywhere else, thank you for coming to Red Bank. However, I think it's pretty clear from what we've seen tonight that what we have are, number one, some paid activists. Number two, what we have are folks advocating directly for the closure of a single business in town, right? Gary Hager's name has been mentioned on the record a number of times already this evening. So one has to wonder, what is our legal exposure and what is our legal liability? Just because somebody comes and offers to change a tire for free doesn't necessarily mean you want them changing their tire. Just because we have an attorney who volunteered her services as a taxpayer, I don't want just some random attorney to come in and just because they'll do it for free, defend us in a case that we're walking into, knowing full well what we're walking into. Why don't we just come up with a compromise solution where we allow Bark Avenue, and this is a guy I've never spoken to, I have no idea who he is. He could be in this room, he could not be in this room. I have no idea who this guy is. But this is really unfair, right? This is really unfair, Mayor. You guys just raised taxes 5% a couple weeks ago, right? Why don't you focus on, you've got a borough report which is completely scathing that speaks to a lot of your individual responsibilities that none of you guys are doing, none of you guys have done a good job on over the course of years. We've had systemic failure at Borough Hall, and yet we're trying to close a guy's business over, first of all, a lot of the testimony is also nonsense. A lot of those USDA violations, I looked them up, a lot of them are process and paperwork violations. There have been others from breeders, but they go back further than when Gary's been getting them. A lot of the act from these quote-unquote puppy mills, and there are still some out there, they've been cleaned up, but not all of them for sure. But from what I looked at Bark Avenue, and from what I looked at online, a lot of this stuff is really nonsense. When you have a bunch of activists from other towns who are coming here and trying to launch a crusade on our dimes. And I urge you to, instead of doing this, do your job, right? We have a whole report that says you're not doing your jobs. None of you are doing your jobs.
We're addressing the ordinance. You can address the
Understood.
ordinance later if that's what you want.
Will do. But my point is stop with this nonsense and actually do what you're here to do. Stop targeting one man and one business, because you're going to get us all sued. Every taxpayer in town is going to get sued. And you know what? Thanks to the free lawyers are fine, I'm sure. But you know, when you got a $2 million judgment, free lawyer doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter what you paid in legal fees, especially when you have to pay the other guys too. Is anyone aware of what happened in the city of Las Vegas when they passed a quote-unquote puppy, when they passed their puppy ban ordinance? Nobody? Nobody did the research? You guys have had this ordinance for 4 months. Nobody did the research? So what happened was,
Our reference, this is not a show and tell time, but our reference is New Jersey law, and New Jersey law, not a Nevada law.
well, we have a federal government, which, you know, you like a whole lot more than I do. And that federal government, right, exactly, my feeling exactly.
Federal government?
No, actually,
Mistaken on
yeah, I just meant as an entity.
Oh, okay.
They were talking about filing in federal court, and the city of Las Vegas did not want to accept the litigation. So I really don't want Red Bank to be in that same situation because there are existing store owners. So there's a very good compromise here that can let you all get back to focus on what you're supposed to be doing, and that's running the borough, and you just ban them going forward for any other businesses, and when Gary Hager closes doors, he'll close his doors. He knows he's got a spotlight on him, he's gonna watch who he pulls in. I mean, he'd be an idiot not to. So you've made your point, now let's move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, motion to close? Second? All in favor? Aye. Motion to table to July 18th with a new public hearing. Second? All in favor? Aye. Okay, it's tabled to July 18th. Then we go on to ordinance 2018. I'm sorry, no more ordinance. Unless there's any objections, we are going to be moving the following resolutions by consent. Resolution 18-163, 164, through and including 172. Motion?
I'm on that one.
Second? All in favor? I know there's some abstentions on a couple, so. Okay. One at a time. Michael, you're going to stand on one?
I'm standing on 165.
Okay. Mark? Okay. Other than that, all in favor? For roll call vote now, Resolution 18-173, appointing Fred Corcione as construction official and setting his salary. Motion? Second? All in favor? Any opposed? Resolution 18-174, appointing Thomas Welsh as fire marshal and setting his salary. Motion? Second? All in favor? Resolution 18-175, appointing approved the hiring of Parks and Recreation Sergeant. Motion? Second? All in favor?
I abstain on 175.
Thank you. Resolution 18-176, awarding a professional services contract to William McGinn as municipal prosecutor pursuant to the not fair and open process established by the statute. The reason why we're appointing a new prosecutor is that Brian Wilton, our existing prosecutor, has resigned since he will be taking a position in the governor's office. Motion? Second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Resolution 18-177, authorizing tax appeal settlement regarding Verizon, which is their corporate building on Broad Street and Hudson Avenue, pursuant to the recommendation of our assessor as well as special counsel Dan O'Hearn. Motion?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution 18-178, authorizing the CFO to conduct financial matters, to conduct financial matters between meetings during July and August of 2018. And it's a fancy word of saying that certain bills have to be paid, and because we have 3 weeks before the next council meeting, those are the normal bills such as utilities and the like that can be paid directly as a result of the CFO approving the payments through digital transfer. Motion?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Resolution 18-179, authorizing a place-to-place extension of premises for the transfer of a plenary retail consumption license, which is for 9 Lives Incorporated, speaking of pets, I guess, trading as Jamians. Since this is a license transfer, any members of the public wish to be heard on the transfer? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve? Second? All in favor? 9 Lives is approved. Any other proclamations, resolution, Pam? No? Okay. Payment of vouchers, be it resolved by the mayor and council that the bills be paid on the attached checks registry. She's talking, amounting to $3,712,129.41.
So moved.
Motion second? Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Any old business? Any new business? Audience? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Welker, and my family and I have lived at 24 Wordley Street in Red Bank for 7 years. My wife's here. I have my neighbors, a few neighbors here today. We love Red Bank, New Jersey. We always have. I've lived all over the country, and I'm back here where I belong. I'd like to live here for many years to come. That being said, I'm here to address a very serious health concern that is affecting me, my family, and the surrounding East Red Bank community, and it's rats. A few years ago, after noticing rats in our backyard, an adjacent neighbor to my backyard on McLaren Street, a gentleman by the name of William Tomeno, was caught and admitted to feeding rats. A caseworker was assigned. William cleaned up a lot of clutter on his very small property, and the problem seemed to have stopped. This gentleman is a bit of a recluse. He admitted to feeding the rats whom he considered his friends and a mother to. In 7 years, he's spoken one sentence to us, and it's pretty much completely withdrawn and almost unapproachable. Since the weather has been turning after a long winter, we noticed rats again in our yard, as well as rat holes under our fence. We had called Monmouth County Health Department a couple of weeks ago about the situation, and Otilia Dos Santos was assigned to the case. Coincidentally, another property located across the street on the corner of Worthley and Marion appeared to be the culprit, as it has been abandoned and is in very bad, poor condition. Neighbors had seen both rats and raccoons coming out of a hole in the foundation. Mrs. Dos Santos was in the process of notifying the bank, which now owns the property, and getting the bank to both exterminate the property as well as board it up. In the last 2 weeks, the rat holes under our fence have been getting worse and worse, and we were catching rats daily in traps. Having had enough and afraid for my kids and pets to be in our own backyard, we called for an exterminator to put bait boxes around, which cost about $200. Then came the discovery on this Saturday, June 23rd. My wife had walked over to Mr. Tomeno's property on Saturday and recorded a disgusting and haunting video that has been circulating around the community. At least a dozen, probably close to 20 rats in broad daylight, frolicking, fighting, and mating feet away from my property. The police were called immediately, where they deemed no criminal activity was being conducted and that it was a health or social service issue. However, Mr. Tomeno did admit again to the officers that he was feeding them peanuts. The response on Monday was encouraging, as the video had circulated to members of Red Bank Code Enforcement and Public Utilities. We had a crowd of about a half a dozen Red Bank Township and Monmouth County employees watching the firework displayed with mouths wide open in disbelief at the sight of dozens of rats in all shapes and sizes dancing around the property, going under my fence, climbing up the trees and shrubs, all in broad daylight with no fear that we were standing just feet away. My children's bedroom windows are less than 10 feet away from this. Everyone present, including Cliff Keene, Director of Public Works, and John Zimenez, Code Enforcement, said they had never seen anything like this. Neighbors are coming out across the area to complain about rats on their property. Some of them, like I said, are here today. Mrs. Santos was present and cited Mr. Tomeno for harboring rats and was ordered to exterminate them. However, given Mr. Tomeno's mental status and the fact that he has little or no income, lives on disability, it was apparent to Mrs. Santos that he may not comply. Mrs. Santos had exterminators all over there today to quote the work, which Mr. Santos said will quickly be paid for by Monmouth County. However, Mr. Tomeno wanted to review the contract, so now Mrs. Santos is going back over there tomorrow to see if he has signed. Mrs. Santos is also calling Senior Services. A few hours ago, our exterminator came back to check the bait boxes he placed on Monday. They are not taking the bait. In 5 years of being a branch manager, he has never seen the rats not take this professional grade bait, which means they are still being fed. Mr. Tomeno is feeding the rats and most likely will not stop. This would also explain why we are not seeing rats in our homes. And my neighbors are right here not seeing them in our homes, okay? This is beyond reproach and simply disgusting. This is not only a health issue, but a quality of life issue. My kids can't play in their own backyard. I came home from a work trip on Sunday to my wife breaking down in tears, wanting to move. I'm afraid that one or both of my dogs will get sick and maybe die. There's disease in the rats, their feces, their urine, or from the risk of poison and poisoned rats now lacing the property. Which brings us to the extermination process, and I'm almost finished. The exterminators cannot use any strong chemicals, the powder as they call it, due to the proximity to other residential properties such as mine and putting humans and pets at risk. Assuming Mr. Tomato stops feeding them, the rats now take the bait. The city will now have to deal with hundreds of dead and dying rats infesting this community, and most likely winding up in sewers and rivers. The only option is these rats need to be physically trapped and removed. Like anything, there's a cause and effect, and for the sake of the safety of the Red Bank community, we need to first focus on the effect, which is the rats. With the help of Monmouth County's Health Services, we need the Township of Red Bank to do everything they can to stop this today. Then we need to look at the cause. And it's not just William Tomato, there are other properties such as the one around the corner that are in dire straits and in major health issues. But with William Tomato's deteriorating mental and physical health, I'm asking for senior services to step in to help Mr. Tomato find a better environment to live in. He is putting his neighbor's health and his own health at risk. His house must be absolutely infested. Rats can mate at 5 weeks old, and gestation period is 3 weeks. So every day that this is not resolved is resulting in more rats in the colony. And due to the various sizes of rats seen, there have been numerous generations, and growth is now exponential. I will conclude by saying that I will not rest until my family's quality of life is restored and their health is not being threatened. So far, I feel that the response from Monmouth County and Red Bank has been extremely positive and proactive, but I'm prepared to take any legal action to ensure that this ceases and never happens again. I brought Rob Moore, a friend, attorney, as well as an East Red Bank neighbor, and the two of us are putting a coalition of neighbors together to make sure this stops. Thank you.
Number one, I appreciate your sentiments and your report to us. I know that as I got here this afternoon, the business administrator advised me that there was an issue over the weekend that transpired. What I would invite you to do, if it's not too much of an inconvenience, we probably don't have, the formal meeting will end rather quickly, and maybe we can adjourn with your neighbors for a second to get a couple more bits of information with the administrator. And I know the chief is here, and let's strategize a little bit before you leave tonight and report back together. So we'll meet in the side room if you don't mind. And I think 5 minutes might be better spent to get some more information so that we know what to do further.
Thank you.
Okay, but thank you for the report, and thank you for coming to us. Painful as it is. Ms. Bernie.
Hi, Cindy Burnham, 71 Wallace Street. I just want to say, regarding these folks, I was just told a few days ago from, I don't know, Scott? Did any of you guys talk to Scott? No? Well, Scott used to live on McLaren, now he lives on Harrison, and he walks to WOW every day. And he goes past my house, and I was out there, and he said, Cindy, you've got to call code because there's like 25 rats running around in the front of this yard. He said, some of them are this big. They're huge. So I didn't get to call Tommy today, but I just want to say that I've heard about this too, and we really need to take action. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Quinn.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilman.
Good evening, Fred.
P.O. Box 207 for the Red Bank. Mr. Miller, the last council meeting, I was not here, but I just want to know, is something going on with their health insurance?
With whose health insurance?
The rural health insurance?
What do you mean, something going on? There's always claims. We pay the premiums.
Are we getting different health insurance?
I'm sorry?
Are we getting different health insurance or cheaper health insurance or something?
Well, whether or not the insurance changes by state law, you can't go to something which is less than what one has. It's got to be equivalent. So I don't know what your question is.
Well, did you bring up the council meeting that you checking on the health insurance or something?
We have new risk managers.
That's just the administrator. The insurance is the same. The company that administers the claims was changed, but
Oh,
the
okay.
insurance is the
I
same.
wasn't here, so I just
We
wanted to
can't change
follow
a
up.
policy of insurance or benefits because they have to be the same, you know.
Okay.
Yeah,
And that's
thank
by union contract.
Yeah, it's just the people met,
Huh?
not the actual insurance.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
If not, we have a need for executive session briefly this evening. So we're going to adjourn to executive session to discuss anticipated litigation. No action will be taken. We will just be coming back and adjourning. Okay. Thank you for coming.